So everybody most likely who would be watching this, almost every podcast has brought up the math of consciousness. So they're already familiar to some point. I mean, that's been a very large focus of my life over the past, since I discovered it in February, and it sounds like yours as well for a long time. So what was really interesting to me was what came up on the end of the retreat, the very last day, about your reaction to Tom saying he wanted to facilitate, and you just me seeing that, like, oh, somebody can be this high, like in the 600s or where, I don't know exactly where you measure, but and still have these feelings of, I don't want to say that was like a lower level feeling, but feelings of judgment and feelings of like, I want things to be a certain way. And so I'm curious, like, first off, does that resonate?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you have, like, now you just accept it basically, or love, like, is it still uncomfortable to have that feeling? Like, did that trigger you when you're like, who the heck is this guy who's trying to come in here and change up my retreat?
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, this is a unique circumstance because this isn't just someone like hate commenting me on Twitter or something like that. It's very different where this person, we have a specific form for people wanting to join the retreat, and this guy just out of nowhere was just like, oh, I want to co-facilitate this with you, which of course means I'm going to take on a leadership position. I don't know you two, but I'm going to come on in and take a leadership position. That's very different than someone, just, saying something mean to your face or online, whatever it is. It's like, hold up. Who are you? And it's not like Tony Robbins is there being like, oh, I want to, and then like, of course, yeah, go right ahead. But this guy, that's why I call him like a nobody on there. Like, who is this guy? So yeah, I still definitely have those feelings. Like, who are you, to think you can, I'm not saying you can't do this work. You can do this work, but to get in our thing without knowing us, like, what? It really felt like someone, imagine like walking across the street right now and we're having dinner and he's like, oh, I'm gonna come have dinner with you guys. Like, we don't even know you. You're a stranger walking across the street. What are you talking about? And so it was definitely a unique feeling, but also understanding he's now meeting him. He intuitively kind of felt like it was right to say something like that. And we're very glad that he did. And how we went across it was like, hey, you're here as a participant. You're not here to co-facilitate, you're not a co-host, you're here a participant. And then if it feels right for you to have some time to speak on what you're an expert at, then great. But there's no expectation for that because this is our thing. This is our people. But thankfully, Jack let me know, like, it just feels right for him to come from. I'm like, sounds good, no problem. But yeah, back to like the initial question when it comes to vibration and those feelings, that in particular, like I was saying, it's kind of accurate for someone to be like, wait, what are we talking about here? Why would you want a piece of the pie? Like, what do you mean? But yeah, just because someone is high vibe doesn't mean they are unwavered in all moments. We're still human, and we still are subject to the human condition. And so although it may be less than the average person, we're still subject to things happening and our emotions going crazy. But what keeps someone high vibe or moves them up to the high vibe isn't necessarily not having those emotions, but dropping any attachment towards having those emotions. And so if I were to feel like so much shame and guilt around a millisecond or even like an hour of, oh, I can't believe they replied that on my tweet, or I can't believe Tom insisted he comes for no reason, I don't even know this guy. If I were to have shame that I acted that way, of course, shame being lowest vibration, of course I'm going to go down. And so that's what I feel like has honestly happened for me as I talk about the retreat. We're going deep first thing. What I feel like has been happening for me up until maybe the last day of the retreat, so yesterday, was understanding I'm stepping into a new life where I'm doing this for a profession. And there's a lot more on the line. I have a lot of people I'm taking care of. I have technically like employees, family members now that I need to take care of. And I, still being human, despite teaching this, had a story in my head that I need to be the unwavered consciousness leader. and I can't have a moment where I show any form of undesirable emotion. And because I said I can't or I shouldn't, or, I had fear in my mind that if people saw me in a lesser state, it would take away all my credibility or status, or my clients would leave me for some reason. And it was very good because I conceptually understood. I was kind of in what I called a retreat, like a jail cell, a bird's nest for myself. But it felt really good for someone to kind of prompt me to go deeper on that, like Tom did. Of course, it makes perfect sense why he came, and to really help me with that. And yeah, he really showed to me that I'm carrying that within that story for no reason, and to be the best spiritual teacher, intuitive healer, or coach, whatever I call myself, it's to be fully at peace with whatever emotion comes up and feel it fully. Of course, not act on it and do something to hurt someone or whatever it is, but allow myself to feel whatever that is. And so that was huge, because I conceptually knew that. I've been teaching that for a while, and I've been following it for a very long time. But then life throws something at you, and it kind of throws you off a little bit. And still, you may be able to teach it properly, but you may not be living it 100%. And I don't think I was living it 0%, but I was living it 80%. And the 20% of that period of time was out of alignment, and I can feel the difference. And probably people around me can feel the difference. But yeah, so that was great. And it makes it so clear again, like why Tom came. Why this guy who is, I think, late 40s came to this event where people are anywhere from 20, Rohan's 40, so 20 to 40, but mostly mid-20s, some mid-30s. Why he insisted to come to an event that was ran by a 25 and 23-year-old, someone who's half his age. There was obviously a reason for that. And I think, I learned a lot from him. Others learned a lot from him. And he learned a lot from this experience. And so it was so mutually beneficial. And he was an incredible asset for the retreat. And so, yeah, just very, very grateful for the plethora of lessons he taught us over there.
Right. It's just, I think we were kind of talking about it. Life always gives you exactly what you need. Whether it's like the lesson that you need to learn, and then also if you don't learn that lesson, you're going to keep getting that lesson until you learn it. So I'm sure you've had an experience like that, but for me it took me 3 times to learn the lesson that I didn't want to have 7 sales calls on my calendar every day. Because I was getting pulled in or sucked into, I can make $30,000 per month. So I'm going to go, and this is a great opportunity. And then I even am writing down, do I really want that? Like that many calls, that much work? No, not really, but I can do it for a couple months, and then I'll decide after that. Or I will ramp up to whatever the KPI is, prove that I can do it, which is maybe something about being enough, right? Maybe there's something there in and of itself.
Yeah.
But yeah, this 3rd time was finally the time where I was like, okay, I'm not making that mistake again. And I was journaling on it, like what is the pattern, and what is the self-sabotage pattern? And that one is repeating of like starting to build something that I really care about, and then getting distracted by something that I know doesn't matter, with the goal of how do I make more money, right? Or how can I make more money in a shorter amount of time? Because as you've seen on Twitter, or actually I don't know, you probably have a whole different reality in your Twitter, but in mine it's like everybody's talking about making money, and if you're not making, like your identity is how much money you're making. So what is you probably don't even live in that reality on Twitter. Like, are you seeing much of that? People talking a lot about money?
I think I used to quite a bit. I mean, before stepping into this new work that I do, I was very much money focused, money driven. I was in sales myself. I was financial advisor. The whole thing was money. The whole thing was the best rate of return. The whole thing was income per month, whatever it is. And so my feed was also like that. And I realized like it is incredibly toxic, because there are so many different metrics of life. Some of the most successful, wealthy people in the world are miserable when it comes to their health, when it comes to their overall happiness, when it comes to their family connections. And like, what's the point of the money if that's the case? And that's something we've also all kind of heard, right? We need a balance, and maybe money isn't everything. But the one real underlying thing about all that is like, why do we feel a need to have so much money in the first place? And now I'm incredibly pro-capitalist, very libertarian. Always have been, open to changing, but may always will be. And so I'm definitely not against money. I'm not trying to put that out there. But when we feel as if we need to create an imbalance in our life, our day-to-day human experience, to have our bank account number be the largest it possibly can be, my question is like, why? For what? And I say that now because I wish I would have asked myself that years ago. Like, why do I feel as if I need it to be this way? And what I realized for me was that whenever I want like an extreme of something, an extreme amount of wealth, an extreme amount of these things, and I'm willing to do anything for it, it's not coming from a place of love, it's coming from a place of lack. It's coming from a hole that I so deeply want to fill. And so I plan on making a lot of money in my life. I'm making good money now. And so I'm not against money. It's an inanimate object. I'm not against any inanimate object. What I've decided that I'm not going to live my life as is someone who chases money at all costs. And so I want to make sure that, of course, how much is important, but also how is very important. Do I enjoy it? Is it impacting people? Is it a net positive for the world? Is it serving others? That has become my true metric of success. And when you make that shift, when you actually believe it's possible to support yourself, support your family, support your people you care about, while also doing something you love and enjoy that makes a positive impact in the world, once you open up your mind to the point it's a possibility, you'll see money as just a tool that it is, a tool for change in the world. And so, yeah, my Twitter feed is no longer that, but it was for so long until I just got like frustrated. And oftentimes it takes meeting the people that are big on Twitter or big on social media in general or just big in life that have the money, and you realize, oh my gosh, they're broken. They're miserable. Sometimes it takes that moment to be like, it ain't me.
Yeah. Everybody's just figuring it out. That's the biggest thing I've learned. Like the guy that you look up to, he's also just figuring it out and making it up as he goes. We oftentimes put people on a pedestal and then we have this like, I'm not going to do this or I can't do this yet because I'm not ready or whatever the case is. And then come to realize that like everybody's just figuring it out. I've had multiple conversations in the DMs where I said something like that to somebody I really looked up to. I'm just like, yeah, I'm really just trying to figure this out. And he's like, I'm still trying to figure it out too. I was like, really? You with 100,000 followers, you're trying to figure out how to write copy or how to grow your brand? Okay. Yeah. Well, that's interesting.
We're all just here to figure it out.
Yeah.
We're all here to experience it, right? And on this retreat, that's the point of life, to experience it. But yeah, I mean, we're all just figuring out. We're all lost.
Yeah.
We're all lost and trying to find our way.
It seems like there's this almost like hero's journey of whether it's with God specifically and our relationship with God, where we start, our parents, I don't know if were you brought up was God part of your parents' life?
No, not at all. I mean, my parents grew up Catholic, weren't like hardcore Catholic supporters by any means, but went to church with their family most Sundays. And then around the time they started going to college and working and then had me, they just kind of faded away. I think they believed in a God, and they thankfully gave me a lot of God-like values when it comes to how to treat people. But religion itself was never a prominent piece of my life.
Interesting. Did you guys pray before meals?
No.
Okay.
No, never. And so they never pushed it on me. I really had to kind of dig to even have them say the word God. They were never hesitant from it, but it just wasn't a priority for them to talk about it. And then so I grew up pretty much agnostic for most of my life. I'm like, it could be, but
I don't know.
Yeah.
Interesting. Now, where are your parents at now? Are they in that same spot, or are they coming back?
I think because of my life now and watching what I do and how much I give credit to God and providing more of a tangible, technical, practical way of understanding how God exists and it's within all of us, I think has really opened their minds to it. And I'm excited to see their journey. I'm fully at peace if they stay exactly where they're at, or they become an atheist, or if they become a true believer, if that's even a thing. Again, these are terms used by religion, and I don't really prescribe to a certain religion. I think all of them are their own deviations from the truth, not from the truth, of the truth. They're all representations of the same truth. But yeah, I think spirituality and religion is very, very different. And I think they're definitely becoming more spiritual now that their one and only son, one and only kid, life is based off of it.
Can you unpack a little bit more? Spirituality and religion are different.
Yeah, most definitely. So, oh man, that's a great question. What comes to me first when I think of spirituality, I think, is believing in more than what the eye can see.
Mm-hmm.
And if you believe that there is potentially something out there that either created us or is maybe guiding us in this life, I would put that as spirituality. And then also under the spiritual, if you want to call it, culture, because that's been adopted a lot nowadays. Of course, there is astrology, there is different types of stones and gems and stuff like that. There's Tantra, there's Reiki, there's all these other things, which I think all have some merit to them. And so that's, I think, spirituality, a belief in more than what the eye can see. Then there's also religion. Religion, of course, there are many, many different ones in the world, but the ones that we're most familiar with, the major ones, they are an interpretation of what happened either a few decades ago, a few hundred years ago, like some newer ones, or thousands upon thousands of years ago, where a certain person or group of individuals oftentimes wrote down how to live.
Mm-hmm.
And most of those people that they look up to, which I believe the far, far majority of them did exist and did have the incredible powers or gifts that they say they do, they're basing a religion off of pretty much a rule book that their person gave them to live by. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I think there's so much merit in every single religion. All the major religions I've seen, I don't really study them that deeply on purpose, but of the ones I've been exposed to so far, I see truth, I see delight, I see merit in all of them. That also doesn't mean that that is the only way.
100%.
Just because Christianity has so much truth in it doesn't mean Judaism is incorrect. Doesn't mean that the Nation of Islam or Muslim is incorrect. Doesn't mean that any of the other ones are incorrect. And that's just a way I look at it. I look through religion as more of a spiritual lens. I think at the more macro level of spirituality, we see that it really is the understanding that, number one, God is real, but God is everything and everyone that we see. Now, this is only something that I learned from taking a shit ton of mushrooms and having psychedelic experiences where I felt in the presence of, I wouldn't say God, but of light, of true light. And that gave me, whether you want to call it the downloads or wisdom, whatever it was, about the perspective I'm meant to have upon the universe. I'm not saying it's true, but I'm saying it's true for me. And that we're all deeply connected. We all have God within us. Everything we see, good or bad, no matter who you are, no matter what you've done, you have God within you. And I believe, just like religions say, I think there is a certain way of living that would promote a more aligned life to the light. If that's even a thing. So that's definitely a lot on spirituality and religion, but that's how I would decipher. All religions are spiritual, but not all spiritual people are religious.
Interesting. I've said this multiple times, and I feel like I love this view, is that like all these religions are talking about the same universal truth. They just have a different copywriter. They have a different way of perceiving these things, and for me, it's like, let's look at the commonalities, and those you can probably go experience them and realize they're universal truths.
Most definitely.
Right.
If you look at, let's say, the top 4 or 5 major religions, and you look at all the things that they agree upon, oftentimes it's like the golden rule, treat others the way you'd want to be treated yourself, and a very small handful of, I wouldn't even call them rules because you don't have to follow rules, but they're laws of the world, laws of the universe, that if you follow, more than likely it'll benefit your human experience. That's what I think they're all talking about. And if we can strip away, I'm not saying all this stuff is not relevant or not useful, but if you really just want a summarized version of religion, there's probably like a handful of things that if you follow, your life will be significantly better, that they all agree upon.
100%.
And of course, we create a society where fear exists, in which people are more fixated on differences as opposed to similarities. But they're a lot more similar than they are different.
Yes. And it's interesting that it doesn't seem like everybody can see that. And they believe that their way is the one true way, for example. And I guess it's not our job to tell somebody what to believe, or they can come to their own conclusion, and maybe they will as life goes on.
And maybe they're right. There's a possibility they're right. There's a possibility I'm wrong, you're wrong. Many other, right. Yeah, possibly. Well, if you are, then you are. Yeah. But yeah, I think there has been incredible spiritual and religious teachers throughout humanity. And we are all wrong to a certain extent. It just can vary, depends on our levels of wrongness will vary.
Yes.
You know, and it's not a wrongness of I'm intentionally not following something that I know to be true. It's a wrongness of ignorance about the vast information and wisdom and details that make up what the universe is. We're all ignorant to some extent. We don't know the full picture, and that's completely okay. And it's okay to feel as if what you know right now is right. And it's also okay if what you believe is right now doesn't feel right anymore 6 months from now. Or it does still feel right, but now there's also this that we're adding on top of it. So it's an ever-evolving belief in what's around us, and it's completely okay to shift. It's completely okay to disagree.
Yes. All of these, when you're talking about spirituality, you're naming a lot of things that whenever I talk about some of these things, like astrology, numerology, I'm like, okay, now we're starting to enter like what's bordering on the woo-woo. Like it's almost like my defensive mechanism, because I'm like, I can't prove this stuff, but I've experienced it to be true. I mean, like pulling the tarot cards.
Yes.
For example. Exactly. I'm like, this is a load of BS, and then I get the perfect card for exactly what I need. And then the other time that I did it, there was a story of 5 cards, and it had the perfect message for me. And I realized that you can with like horoscopes and signs and things like that, you can, people, they leave enough room to interpretation so you can interpret them how you need. But it's like, to me, it's too coincidental. Maybe I could have made a story about every single card that's in the deck, but I don't know. It seems like there's greater forces at play. It's kind of like this, when the student is ready, the teacher appears, or when you need a lesson, life will give it to you, and usually it'll appear as a problem.
Most definitely.
Right?
100%. Yeah, or at least we interpret it as a problem. Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, a year and a half ago, I would have thought tarot cards are complete bullshit too. But then when every single time it's pulled, it makes sense. Or when I get an astrology reading, and every single time they tell me about personality or about what's going on currently or what can happen, and then it happens, there's so much evidence that I'm like, they haven't been wrong once. Not one thing. It's like, it's all been like spot on. And it's like, not saying this is 100% true, but it's definitely not 0% true. There's been so much, whether it's how many times you've pulled a tarot card or astrology reading, whatever it is, you've now collected more data upon that. And the far majority of it's been true, if not all of it. So we can't discredit it as a whole just because it's a woo-woo.
Right.
But I used to do that because how can these cards tell me about my life? Because I used to assume that everything in this universe was disconnected from each other. The fact that we met is just purely coincidental.
Right.
There was no larger force at play that made sure we met. Right. And it's completely okay to think that too. We all did at one time.
Yeah.
But the moment you literally start to open your eyes to see that maybe this is all connected much, much deeper than we can ever imagine, that's when you begin to believe. And once you begin to believe, that's when you begin to see. The biggest shift I believe I've made in my life and many others I think at the retreat have started making theirs, is there's this old saying that's like, I'll believe it when I see it. I can promise you two things about that person. Number one, they're a pessimist, obviously. Number two is their life is not going how they want it to go. Mm-hmm. Because everything that you want in life, in order to create it, in order to get it, you must first believe it is possible before it appears in reality.
Yep.
The whether it's a business goal, relationship goal, or just a magical experience to have that day as you're walking to the park, you have to believe it's possible before it can happen. If you went on every sales call and was like, there is no way I'm going to close this, and you genuinely believe that, the chances of you closing are incredibly small, if not zero.
Probably zero.
But if you believe it's possible, just that belief, you can say the same words, just that belief will change the likelihood of that outcome. And so if we know that to be true, it just matters what extent of which is that true. I am of the belief that anything you imagine is possible. So I've seen it from my own life. This house we're in right now, the businesses we're starting, the retreat, that was in my head one day. That was in my head. And then it happened. It's possible, but you need to believe you're worthy of it. And believe that if it's meant to be, it'll happen for it to happen.
Yeah. A real world example for me that brings it, like, my whole world used to be rock climbing and snowboarding. And for snowboarding, I could visualize front flips, back flips, 360s, and I could do them all. But I couldn't visualize a 540. I couldn't see myself actually doing it. And I could never spin 540 degrees. Or I could never land it. And so it's just like, until you create, or until you actually know that, or have seen it, like in your mind's eye, for example, that's kind of how I view, like, if I can picture, if I can see myself doing it, then I know that I can do it. Or then the universe has accepted, I don't know how to put this into words, the universe knows that that is my desire and makes it so. Or because I believe it, then I can see it.
Most definitely. And now there are physical limits, right?
We can't fly.
You can't fly, right? You may imagine that, and it probably won't happen. You couldn't get in a plane and fly. I probably won't ever play in the NBA at this point, especially because I'm kind of aged out of it. If I were to go, I'm a white boy with like an 8-inch vertical. The chances are slim, right? But that being said, there's another reality that takes place in which if another person is doing it, that means I can do it too. We're all just human. Of course, we vary in intellect and, opportunity we got right out of the gate in life. But if someone did it, you can too. And whether it's becoming wealthy or healthy or whatever it is you want in life, there is someone that was in a worse position than you at this moment that somehow overcame that position to get to where they want to go. 100% of the time. And so if someone else can do it, and you're also human, you can too. Yeah. But that's a level of empowerment, and great power leads to great responsibility. This level of power and responsibility, a lot of people aren't really willing to own up to. The fact that you are in complete control of your life. And you can change it to look however you want in any given moment. That's a hard pill for most people to swallow. So they choose not to believe it's possible.
Yeah.
So you kind of stay in a little box of comfort.
Yeah. I don't know if you're familiar with Luke Belmar, but he talks often about how, or somebody asked him if he's self-made, he's like, well, everybody's self-made. It's just some people don't want to admit it. Because then they have to admit that the life that they have made, or what they're living now, is their doing. Yes. Which is challenging to look at. It's way easier to blame circumstance and talk about who my parents were and what happened to me in the past and all these things. But in actuality, we have so much more control. Like, this podcast is literally called The Reality Creators. Because it's these patterns, I feel like I'm pretty good at recognizing patterns, and these patterns they happen over and over and over and over again, right? Like even when I'm going to Vegas this week to count cards playing blackjack, I will visualize being at the cage and then counting out the $100 bills, and maybe even them being like, hey, you got to fill out this tax form because you won too much.
Yeah.
Or them like asking for my ID and like copying it and writing it down, and then that happens.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing. I'll visualize the dealer busting over and over again and all the blackjacks being on my side of the table. And it happens.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Definitely. And the more you keep it top of mind, that exact experience of the person counting out your money, the more you don't allow other opposing thoughts to even infiltrate your mind. And this is the part that a lot of spiritual people miss. You're manifesting it there, right? You're imagining it and envisioning it, which is great. And then follow it up by doing the actions necessary to align with that vision is what will make it happen.
Yeah, you can't just say I'm a millionaire.
100%.
Hold the mood rough.
Yeah, and now yours is unique because it's gambling, right?
Allegedly.
Gambling. Yeah, yours is more of a strategy. But for everything else in life, whatever you want, if you keep it top of mind and you do not allow anyone or anything to take it from you, to lessen your perceived chances of it, and then you follow by doing the obvious action necessary step by step to get it. I'm not saying you'll get it perfect timing, but it'll happen when it's meant to.
Yeah. The only way it doesn't is if you just stop doing those actions or get sidetracked to another thing or allow the negative thoughts to overcome the positive ones. Because we all have negative thoughts.
Yeah.
Right? So I was on the last sales job that I had, the one that I was telling you was the final learning lesson I got of I don't want 7 calls plus a meeting per day every day. One of the things that the CEO had, it was like part of the training, was the vertex use of the mind is to block negative thought. And I thought that was incredible, of like, we all have these negative thoughts constantly, right?
Yeah.
Like Dan Coe talks about like 99% of his thoughts are negative. And he says all people's are, I don't know about that. But it's, how do you, like when you have a negative thought, what do you do to block it, reframe it, choose a more empowering thought?
Yeah. Number one, I don't believe all or 99% of our thoughts are negative.
Correct.
I think it's complete bullshit.
Yep.
I think that's someone living in deep fear wanting to justify it as this is just how people are. That's not the case at all. That's how we all probably felt temporarily, but we've also been able to transcend that in some way. There's all been times where we're a little bit more depressed, a little bit more fearful than we are in this moment, which is great. Or maybe right now is the lowest point ever. But you have gotten more optimistic. You have gotten more loving thoughts in a ratio of love to fear thoughts, right? What I have realized from my life is we are all just computers. This is all just a computer. And just like computers, we're subject to viruses. I would call it programs. We have a combination or compilation of, for me, 25 years of programs. Some taught by my parents, some taught by experience out of school, some taught by just society as a whole, what I see in the news, whatever it is. Some incredibly positive, some joyful, some neutral, some also violent, some bad, some negative, whatever it is. And I get to decide, as the beholder of this computer, what data I want to continue and live by and what data I want to release. And so what I've realized is that fear to love ratio works for every aspect of life. Let me give you an example. So this is November 2024. The US election just happened, and both sides, to some extent, had levels of fear. It changed from person to person, but it was an election that felt pivotal to everyone.
Yes.
He said, well, if my guy or my girl wins, we're going to be okay, and potentially better than ever. But if the other party wins, we're screwed.
America's done.
That's a lot of fear, and that is what was been purported to us over and over and over again. They literally call a TV show a program. A commercial is a paid programming. So these things are programming us constantly to believe in something. What I've realized is if I become more cognizant of what is programming me, I can decide whether it serves me, serves my happiness, serves my goals, serves myself and my family, does it serve my health, all these things, or not. And if it does not serve me, I cut it out of my life ruthlessly. Mm-hmm. Now, I haven't been perfect at this, but this past 6 months, kind of like in the heat of all election talk, I was like, wait, every time I listen to something about the election, whether I'm listening to a speech from one of the candidates or an interview with them on or talking about the candidate, whatever it is, I left that experience feeling more fear, more anger, more hatred, and just more undesirable emotions that I didn't really want to have in my life. And then I realized, oh wait, it's not just politics, it's nearly everything on the news. Yep. It's like everything, if it bleeds, it leads. It's gonna bring fear into my life. I'm like, why am I watching this? Because if I look at my actual reality, things are going pretty darn good. Family seems to be relatively happy, relatively healthy. I'm making an impact in my own community and building business, all those other things. Why would I put any extra energy into the news? It really does not affect me that much. Now, it may to some extent, probably not to the effect they're telling me it will. So what if I just put that aside? And what I realized, funny enough, was when I put all that aside, it felt as if I had less fear in my life for everything. Not just my worldview and my concerns around the future leadership of this country, but that fear that I had in politics felt as if it was pouring over into other aspects of life. I didn't realize that until I eliminated it. But when it came to getting a little bit healthier, when it came to starting a new business, when it came to all these other things, what's stopping us is our current perceived level of fear with that. And whether we know it or not, the fear we allow in through other aspects of life, even if I believe the future of the country and whoever is going to be president is going to have nothing to do with my coaching business, if I allow that fear in, it's going to seep into all the different buckets of life.
Yes.
So when I cut all the external fear out, I realized my internal fear towards what I actually want in life was also diminishing. And so over a period of time, when you just go upon living your life, you go for a walk outside, you talk to your neighbors, you do your business things, you go to your job, whatever it is, you communicate with loving family members. Over time, you're receiving so many more positive, loving programs that it's having to clear out the fearful ones because it only can hold so much information at once. And so the more time you go without suscepting or making yourself susceptible to fear, you just begin to have a more loving outlook on life because you look around and all the inputs are positive. I'm not saying 100% all the time. Always something happens to the family and little pain in the leg, whatever's going on in your life. There's always like these little things. But on the grand scheme of things, you're going to have a more happier, positive, loving life if we're more cognizant of what we allow to come within. And once I realized I feel so much better after not watching the news or being around incredibly negative, complaining people, I just feel better. I'm like, well, I'm now literally a better person. I feel less thoughts of, why didn't she take out the trash? Or, why did this happen? Like those thoughts lessen. Like I'm simply a better human for my girlfriend, for what's soon to be my future family, my current family, as a employer, as a leader in many different fields. I'm just a better person when I don't watch the news. Yeah. So it's actually not about me and my human experience, although it's part of it. I feel happier and better. But I'm actually serving others by not letting fear come into my life. And when I'm not letting fear come into my life, I'm more giving to others. I'm also more on offense than I would have been. Because after watching the news and stuff, you're not going to go want to be super ambitious and create these beautiful works of art or businesses, whatever it is. No, you're going to want to kind of curl up in your house and continue watching and be fearful of going to the movie theater if they don't have a freaking metal detector. Do you think someone's shoot up? Like people go to that extreme where it's damn near schizophrenic because of how much they watch the news. And that definitely, there's a little fly coming around, pause for that. Welcome to guest appearance. But people's minds have been so warped and distorted to see the world through a lens of fear that they don't know it or not, but that's actually hindering the growth in all aspects of life they want.
Yes. And it's not just the news, it's a big thing that I learned. Twitter programs you like very intensely.
Most
so
definitely.
I picked up some very positive programming,
Mhm.
right, from Twitter, right? My life is forever better, in my opinion, because I got on Twitter and found money Twitter. And even though now I'm going to be moving away from the money Twitter side of things, right? The guys who are flexing their cars and their watches and all that stuff that I've never cared about or never wanted anyways. And it's just, I heard somebody say at the retreat, I thought it was really interesting. He said he's going to make it a process goal to not use the For You page anymore.
I love that.
To only follow. Like, he gets to choose who he follows, and then he doesn't let in, because the things that go viral are typically negative. Right? And so almost always on the For You page, you can't scroll for more than a minute before you get hit with something that's going to give a reaction. And that reaction, of course, tells the algorithm, hey, he paused. He must like this. Or this hit the sensor, so let's give him more of that. And then you're going to, all of a sudden now you, like, it's the same thing. If you look at the comments of, like, anybody who's famous, like any of Elon Musk's posts, if you look at the comments, you can't go past 3 and then you're like, ugh, wish I didn't read that. And then it's like, I could block the person, I could do whatever, and you can train the algorithm, of course, but if you just choose who you follow, then that's even better.
Most definitely. And I think just like humans, these applications are just software computers.
Yep.
Right? Just like us, we're what they call empty vessels that other people fill. I just put out a tweet like that the other day. We're all empty vessels that other people fill. And for us, as humans that were our parents to begin with, our siblings, the people that were around us at that time, and now it's people at a job, it's what we see in the news, all these other things. It's constantly filling us and shifting how we see the world and how we act in the world. Same as Twitter. It's just people. Twitter, if every single person on Twitter was positive, enlightened, healthy, and wanted to share the amazing things going on in the world, Twitter can be the greatest source of positive information ever. It's just that there are so many people currently so fearful that they're purporting hate onto these platforms. Now, there are some technicalities about it where, they understand what people keep, and, some of them are swayed a little bit more politically one way or another that would make them, put a different narrative, whatever it is. But for the most part, the far majority of it, they want to keep it an empty vessel. They just want your attention. And if they got to serve you the most positive thing in the world, almost anything in the world, they will, to keep that attention. And so to keep that in mind, like, I not only create my reality, what I consume and what I give out, that's also the same on X. If you want X, and I love that example of maybe about the For You page, because they're showing you what other people like.
Yep.
And other people are a lot more programmed in fear than you are at this moment.
Probably a different consciousness level.
A different consciousness level, different everything. So they will show you stuff that doesn't match where you're currently at. And will slowly probably decrease your human experience because others are at a lower conscious at the moment. Which isn't necessarily good nor bad, but it is something to keep aware. And so I love that idea of, it's the For You page, and then it's like the following page on X, and very similar for a lot of platforms. The Explore page for Instagram, and then the normal feed, whatever it is. It's best, I think, if we can curate, if we decide we want to consume in general, but if we want to consume, have it make sure it's people you're following that cause you to more likely be more positive, to be more curious, and that when you put down the phone after having strolled on it for half an hour or whatever it is, you're going to feel better than feeling worse. And some have realized, I just don't want anything to do with any of these. I'm done. And that's okay too. I completely get that. I kind of resonate with that. And also understand, like, you're in full control of your feed. If you start looking up, cat videos and puppy videos and just people having fun, good wholesome fun, your feed will be filled like that. Search that a few dozen times. That's all it's going to be.
Yep.
You can create it into something better if you want. But what people aren't ready to take in is your Twitter feed is near perfect reflection of what's going on within. That's why it's showing it to you. They didn't hijack your mind. They're just mirroring your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at it like that, you're like, oh, I need to change what's going on here. And then everything else, including these terrible platforms, they will also shift to match the level of consciousness, the level of conversation, the level of happiness, love that you have within your mind. They will reflect that.
Yeah. Everything's my fault. Maybe fault isn't the right word, but...
Yeah, everything is a perspective. And sometimes I choose a perspective that doesn't serve me.
Yeah. Tej had, I think I mentioned him every podcast, by the way.
Good.
So go follow at Comedic Bizman on Twitter, Tej Sosa.
Legend.
He had a Delusion Land. I don't think I joined it. Or I think I tried to join it, but it was on like some Mighty Networks platform or something like that I didn't know how to use. But it was where people come in and it's only positive. And this was like 4 years ago that he created this. So he's always been light years ahead, it seems like, of some of these thoughts and things like this, and any of the courses that you go through. He's like, it's incredible. You'll advance quite a bit. But it was like, he turned me on to this book, Useful Delusions. And it's like, if something is true, but it doesn't serve you, and something else is objectively not true, but it's more empowering, it's better to believe the thing that may be objectively not true, but is more empowering. You're better to expose yourself to that.
Yeah.
And he had this, I don't know exactly how it works. My understanding was that it was like where everybody comes and it's just pure positivity and nothing else. And it was an attempt or a tool to get away from what goes viral on Twitter or whatever the platform is of the more negative stuff.
Yeah.
So it's an incredible idea.
Most definitely. I love that idea. It's funny, it's called Delusion Land because there's no such thing as a delusional person. We're all in our own unique realities that we've created.
Yes.
But in comparison to someone else's, we may feel delusional.
Mm-hmm.
But it's funny because I get called delusional all the time because I'm an extreme optimist. And I take full responsibility and empower myself and others to the fullest extent. And realize that everything is actually in their control because they control how they perceive the reality, right? But for a lot of people, they ain't ready for that. And so they call it, oh, I'm delusional. You don't watch the news, you're not keeping up with the world, you're delusional, you're ignorant. Which is completely valid in their world.
Gotta stay informed.
Exactly. You gotta do your part, What I've realized, what I believe, and it's completely okay, we've lived in different realities. I've once lived there and I've chosen no longer to live there. I now live in a reality where I just see the world through a different lens. It may be a more finite lens or potentially a more broader lens. Because as you're living in this world of watching the news, fearful of your own individual life going forward, fearful of how the world's going to be, that is doing a disservice to the actual reality that there are less starving people in the world than ever before. People have access to, less starving. People have access to food than ever before. They are living longer than ever before in most countries. And the only reason why they wouldn't be is because they're overeating.
Right.
Which is why we have so much abundance that it's hurting us. Which is an insane understanding to have. But we are doing so well that it's hurting us.
Yeah.
And it's also our option if we want to hurt us. We have, I always bring it back for food for some reason because I think it's an incredible metric as how we're doing as a civilization. But there is less war than ever before. There's less violence than ever before, statistically speaking. And if you watch the news all day, you're not going to believe that because you hear about the person who robbed the CVS down the street, and you heard about the human trafficking, you hear about all this other stuff going on from all over the world. Which is not saying it's not true, but I'm saying in comparison to how it's ever been before, it's significantly less. And you're seeing the absolute worst of society every time you turn on the TV, and you're not seeing the other 99.99% of human behavior that is just good people doing good things.
Yeah.
That is nature, that is just having fun, building community. There are plenty of just really light-hearted, wholesome things going on in nearly every city around the world. But those are avoided.
You gotta find them. or you have to set your intention or your programming to your tuning fork, whatever you want to call it,
Exactly.
to be able to actually see it instead of brush it off.
Most definitely.
And
So
tell your story.
people that think the world is going to end and think it's delusional if you don't think that, I also believe they're delusional for thinking that. And like all the real metrics are showing that we're going in the right direction.
Yeah.
But people live in their own reality. That's completely okay. And it's a huge part of our growth is accepting that they may never see the world the way we do. My metric for how my world is, or how smart I am, or how aware I am, is, am I getting what I want out of life? Because if you're true, this is something I think Naval said before, of course, everything's kind of footnotes to Naval, which is a footnote to Epictetus and all those other people. But the greatest test of intelligence, of success, is, are you getting what you want out of life? And every single person that I know that has that doomsday vision of life is not getting what they want out of life. Some of them may be rich, but they're also rich and miserable. Those other pockets of life probably aren't doing too well.
Yeah. You said something similar. If you're so smart, why haven't you figured out how to be happy?
Exactly. And that triggers a lot of people because they believe, oh, it's a coincidence if you're happy.
Yeah.
No, it's a formula.
And a choice.
It's a choice. You choose that formula. Again, it's all inputs and outputs. If you're surrounded by positive people all day and you consume only positive things and you tell yourself, I'm only going to act from a positive, generous place filled with integrity, over a period of time, you're not going to feel worse about yourself. You're not going to go have a worse life experience. But people aren't ready to hear that.
Yeah.
But that is a reality. We are in full control of this human experience.
Yeah. And the words that we say, I notice I don't know if you're careful intentionally with the words that you use, or I notice you're very precise with your language. The words that we say have so much power as well.
Yeah.
Over, like, anytime I hear somebody say, I have to do this, I'm like, no, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Like, literally, there's nothing you have to do, right? Or I'm trying to do this, I'm like, oh, so you're planning on failing? It's just like, and that hurts for them to hear. It's like, are you okay if we change that language to something that could be more empowering? Yeah. Because, trying is like, okay, now I have a way to back out of it to say, oh, well, I didn't really try, or like, well, I just tried, I didn't commit. And the thought of fully committing and failing scares people. So if we have that word try in there, and a lot of the time I think it's probably just, again, programming or unintentional. It's patterns that we've picked up from whoever created the school system or all the programming and all that stuff.
Yeah, and this will go a little bit conspiratorial, but I'll go into it because words are incredibly, incredibly important. They call it spelling for a reason. Because you are casting spells on yourself and the world around you.
I just got the chills.
All the words we use to describe what we're doing mean something. We just need to take a step back and realize what they mean. So if we're learning how to spell, we're learning how to cast spells on ourselves and others. And so yes, the words that we speak upon ourselves, most importantly, but to the world, dramatically affect how our experience is. So there's a guy in the retreat who I love and incredibly positive, but there's a common theme out there of it's a grind. We're in the trenches. We're going to war. We're doing all the things. Fuck that.
Yeah.
Why would I ever want to paint a picture that this is going to be hard? Because even if there's an easier way, if that doesn't match that my understanding this is going to be hard, we're going to the war, we're doing this and that, I'm going to take the hard way to get there.
Yes.
But if I say, you know what, starting a big business to make tens of millions, $100 million, it's actually going to be easy. The right people, the right opportunities, everything is going to come exactly when it's meant to. And if it's meant to be, it'll happen quickly and efficiently, and I'm going to love every aspect of the process. When you adopt that mindset and you refuse any other reality, only that can take place.
Yes.
And that is what you believe, and that is what you'll be able to see and act upon. Again, back to the spiritual part, right? So if you see a lot of the music being purported to us, the music that I loved, I was a big Drake fan, J. Cole fan in particular, Kendrick, all these other people, not necessarily questioning those individuals, but the collective culture. I'm not just saying rap. This goes upon for country. This good. Everyone's, catching some heat right now.
Yep.
But they paint a story that's either true or oftentimes not true, that talks about violence or behavior that tears down a person. Same for video games. If I'm playing Call of Duty 12 hours a day, like a lot of young men are, I'm going to have, again, inputs and outputs, I'm going to have a distorted image of the world leaning more towards violence. If my favorite rapper is Lil Baby or Future, and he's talking about drinking lean and keeping something on him, and no matter what, no one's going to cross me without getting away with it. They're not going to get away with crossing me, right? Alluding to you're going to shoot them up, you're going to kill them. And then you see all these people telling you who they admire, and then going and doing the acts that they're admiring or their admirer said to do, whether it's the drugs or the violence. They go commit that. We need to stop acting as if they're not connected. Oh, it's just coincidental. This guy plays how many hours of Call of Duty, and then he does something with a gun that hurts a lot of people? Who would have thought? I'm not saying, again, I'm pretty libertarian. I'm not saying we gotta ban all this stuff and force people to only make positive songs. Of course not. But what I am saying is that these spelling, these words, or these visuals we're creating is changing people's reality. And we live in a reality in which it's not always positive. We're not curating reality in a way to lead to people being happier, healthier, and wealthier.
So interesting. Programming I've heard many times before. Spelling, that's completely on my radar. Even now I'm just thinking we're recording, just making a record.
Yeah.
Which is like...
TV channel. Channel.
Yeah.
They are channeling something to you. Just like this, the spiritual lens of it, you're channeling something through. I'm a channeler. TV channel. Paid program. Yeah, and so when you see it like that, when you see, oh, these are words, they're obviously doing something. I say all this not to Alex Jones, everyone, but to empower them to understand a deeper level of awareness of what's going on around them, so that they can make more conscious, intentional choices to lead to a better future and present moment for themselves and everyone around them.
Incredible. So I want to tee this question up. The question, well, I'll say the question and then I'll provide some context. So I want to know what you did to meet your girlfriend, Elle.
Oh, man.
And the reason that I asked this is because I wrote down, and I decided I'm ready to meet my wife. And so I started writing down in a journal, this is the wife that I'm looking for. And I described the characteristics, and she appeared in less than 3 months.
Of course. So that's a huge part of it. I think it goes down to, but we're using the avenue of wife, right? This applies towards everything in life that we want, though.
Yes.
And wife is a worthwhile thing to want. We need to get incredibly clear on what we want. Seems like you got incredibly clear on what you wanted your wife to be.
Yes. And also, I rewrote a program of what used to be important, where I disqualified something that used to be really important. She needs to be a rock climber.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care about that anymore.
Exactly. 100%. And so that's incredibly important. And a lot of people have done that and found their person. I personally did not write down a list of stuff. Elle did for me, funny enough. Elle did that exactly. And she was 6'2", she was all the things. She was really specific, and it happened. For me, I just looked at, I want a high value woman. Doesn't mean I want a boss woman, billionaire type thing, but I want a woman that is incredibly kind, caring, loving, competent, and can keep up with me intellectually, charismatic, beautiful, vibrant. I wanted someone that would be a fantastic mother to my kids. That was my vision. And preferably blonde with good body features, you know what I'm saying? So that was definitely a bonus, right? And that's part of it too, and it's okay to want that too. It's completely fine. We all have our certain preferences. And so I had a vision of that. And the thing I did, which is the most important thing with manifestation, and it's a perfect example when we talk relationships, is I decided Like, okay, what would it take for me to be worthy of attracting someone like that? Who do I need to build myself into the version of becoming to be worthy of that type of woman? Because that's a high value woman, which means she needs a high value man. How do I become a high value man that will attract the person, oftentimes the opportunities, the money, the friendships, the health? How can I create a holistic approach of who I want to be? What are the steps I can take to get there that will make attracting all the things I want near effortless? And I realized for me, that was just a level of integrity, a level of discipline I didn't have prior.
And those are two high-level words. Was it also, I need to stop doing X, Y, and Z?
It was, the bottom line was not necessarily stop doing something, but start doing other things. It was, let me learn how to keep the promises I make to myself day by day.
Yes.
And this is something we've talked about before, which just stacking habits, right? And so I was someone who had graduated college, had made some money during college, done well for myself, and then took time and moved to Indonesia and lived in Bali for a few years and had no responsibility, no real bills there, no job or anything. I was just started from ground zero. Granted, I had some money, so I wasn't, starting in my mom's basement by any means. But I was like, all right, start a new life. I was out of shape, all those other things. And so I realized I can just incrementally build myself into that high value man with habits and with beliefs. That's it. And so I started with keeping the promise I make myself by simply going to bed at the same time every single night, waking up at the same time every single day. Because I had tried a million times before, what if I do this diet that's pretty extreme, this workout plan that's pretty extreme, this job thing or business that's pretty extreme, whatever it is. They're all kind of a little out of my reach, at least this moment, the level of discipline and understanding of the world. And so I need to build myself in a person that's capable of handling a lot, to having a lot on my plate. And so I started with basic things, like I said, going to bed at a certain time, waking up at a certain time, and be consistent with that for a handful of days. So I'm like, I can still play video games, still eat pizza and sushi, and not leave my place and just veg out the whole time. But I'm going to go to bed at 10 p.m., 10 a.m., I have it a few times, 10 p.m., and wake up at 7 a.m. That's all I got to do. Did that for an entire week. All right, time to add another habit. What's that? All right, after I wake up at 7 a.m., I'm going to go for a walk. First thing, get some sun in my eyes, get my feet in the grass, and just a healthier metric, so I'm going to do that. Did that, and then I'm like, all right, before bed, a week after, now I had another habit. I was like, let me start reading a little bit. Read 10 pages before bed. And so I just started habit stacking. And over the span of a handful of months, I was a lot healthier, a lot happier, and I had months of proving to myself that I can stick to what I say. And when you feel as if you can stick to what you say to the fullest extent, no compromises, because it's for the highest betterment of yourself, you unlock this level of confidence and competence that attracts anyone and everyone.
Absolutely. What's interesting is the program 75 Hard. It can achieve that same thing. If you complete it, you have undeniable evidence that you keep your word and that you get anything done. But what you mentioned is you don't like the framing, and I'd love you to go into more detail, sometimes just putting words in your mouth, but the framing of one being hard, and then also I wonder if way more people have failed it than have succeeded in it. And those people, I wonder if they then have a worse belief of themselves for keeping their word.
Yeah, most definitely. I think we'll start with the word hard, right? It goes back to what we were saying a few minutes ago. Like, I'm in the trenches, I'm going to war, whatever it is. If you say, I'm going to wake up today and today's going to be a hard day, as opposed to an easy, enjoyable day, it's a very, very good chance it's going to be harder and less enjoyable. And so same with this program. I understand it's like, I'm trying to get you hard. I'm trying to get, not like that, pause. You know what I mean? I'm trying to get you to be this unwavering, strong, impenetrable, just, you can do anything type guy. But it may take doing things out of your comfort zone, doesn't mean we need to label them hard things. But yes, hard things will make you feel hard. Again, pause. You know what I'm saying? Those jokes there. I'll stop at that. I'm still in my early 20s, got a kid mind. But that word does not serve my highest growth. Because all it really is, 75 hard is just drinking water and doing some workouts. You're not going to war. Let's stop acting like it's the hardest thing in the world because you do a walk outside when it's raining. Because you had to do a 45-minute workout outside. It's not the hardest thing in the world. I'm not giving it any... I'm not like pointing the finger at saying it's terrible by any means, but let's stop acting like we're doing some type of crusade here, right? We can make this program, the 75 days, as enjoyable as we want or as hard as we want it to be. So word itself, I want to shift to something, I don't know what it would be, but something a lot more positive and empowering.
I saw somebody, I don't know if they completed it, but they did the had the habits of 75 hard and added, I don't know if it was 60 minutes of meditation or 20 minutes, but they called it 75 easy.
Perfect.
So they added another thing. So in theory it should be harder, but they called it 75 easy. Exactly,
and I'll change the mindset. They probably actually did the whole thing then, because if we call it 75 easy, there'd be a lot more success rate simply by the name, which sounds crazy.
Yeah,
but it's true. And then 75 hard, I think it's great. It's definitely not for everyone.
Yeah,
it's not for me. I need more balance in my life. There were days where just like it didn't make sense for me to do an outdoor workout when it's thunderstorming. Or if like I just ran a marathon the day before. I don't want to force myself to go on 2 45-minute walks.
Yep.
And that's okay. And so for myself, it didn't really make sense for me to continue it. For many others, it's done very, very well. But if you fail it, after you've committed to it, and after you've put it on this pedestal of this is what will make me disciplined, this is what will make me worthy, this will make me competent, and you keep on falling short of it, you're only going to decrease your view of yourself.
Yes.
So like, why in life are we going to do this incredibly hard thing, if that's what we're enabling us, and then keep on falling short?
Mm-hmm.
We're incrementally lessening our self-image. That's why I love just simple habit stacking. And within those 75 days, I could have many more daily practices and routines and mindset shifts that serve me than what 75 hard has. And I can build it incrementally in a way that's manageable. So I love the person behind it. I love what it's done for some people that have succeeded at it. I also think a lot more people would be better served with a reframe of it.
Yeah. Okay. This is going to be you'll probably be able to talk for a while on this, even though it's a simple question. Why does meditation work? Because it seems like this, like, to somebody outside, like, you're going to sit with your eyes closed and do nothing.
Yeah. And in a world full of doing, that we are all our metric for success and all those things, it comes to how much we can do, sitting with your eyes closed doing nothing is the most pointless thing in the world. I get it. I thought that for most of my life. What's actually happening here is the far majority of people don't understand that most of human behavior, like we talked about at the beginning of the podcast, is dictated by the programs running through them in their mind. A lot of people realizing that the programs they currently have aren't serving them. And they're realizing they haven't served them, they don't know what to do about it. So they just get more and more sad, depressed, and they just live their life in that way. What meditation does, when you sit with your thoughts, you begin to understand that your mind and the thoughts running through it isn't you. They're just programs repeating themselves. So what meditation does, what breathwork does, what all these mindfulness practices does, allows us to zoom out from our mind, as opposed to being in it and taking every thought as if, oh, that's how that's what I believe about the world. That's this now. And we just remove ourselves from it, zoom out. We can see it as the faulty program that it is, and not grab on to every moment of fear and anger and hatred and sadness, or even joy and everything. We just be neutral. And when you realize that you are not your mind, because you aren't, it's just a computer machine at the top of your head, you can then choose what program is running that you want to listen to. Because if you're in it, you listen to everything. But if you take steps back through these mindful practices, you can choose what programs are serving you. And then you could understand what shifts you can make in your life to change the programs running through your mind, to make them more positive if you'd like.
Love that. That reminded me of you and I worked together. We did the habit stacking, and then after, I think it was the second month, you asked if I want to continue, and I'm like, I think I just need to do the practices. Yeah. And you were like, I love it. That's exactly what I wanted you to figure out.
Yes.
Right? And it brings me back again to Tej. His opening email sequence is like, my goal is for you to stop consuming my content.
Exactly. Any great, at that time, coach or teacher, the goal is for you to graduate. Mm-hmm. You want people to graduate from you. Now, in a scarce world, if people decide to live in that world of fear, I want them to be reoccurring, I want to have them for years, just like most therapists out there, right? Their intention isn't to have you leave them. It's to have you stay and continue to work with them. And there's not necessarily anything wrong with that. And some people need that. But my intention is I'm going to set, whether it's a 1 month, a 3 month, 6 month, a year container, and I want you to graduate from me within that period of time. And if it goes up to the exact amount of time we agreed upon, 3 months, 6 month, year, great. But if it happens before then, even better. Fantastic. I have an abundance mindset that as soon as that client graduates from me, he will then tell people, or others just organically find me, that will take that place so know that I'm going to be okay, and they're going to be better off.
Yes.
But yeah, I want everyone to, pretty much what I do is help people awaken. I want as many people as possible to awaken. And so I want them to graduate as soon as possible.
Yeah.
And thankfully, the awakening process, although it's oftentimes takes years like it did for me, and I'm not fully awake by any means, but it comes down to very simple concepts that we must first understand are possible and then embody. And it's the greatest gift I've ever experienced in my entire life to see people make dramatic increases in their human experience, in their awareness, in their consciousness. And I just know that that's what I want to continue doing for the rest of my life. And I'll always be finding new modalities to do it, to uplift the most amount of people possible, to awakening, to understanding that this world around us, if we want it to be, is heaven. Mm. Heaven is not where you go when you die, at least in my opinion. Although you do go to a certain state that is heavenly, but that state is just as heaven as this can be. Mm.
I just connected something while you're talking. Words having power.
Yeah.
Human being.
It's not a human doing.
Right?
Yes.
And then also when we were talking about when we decided that the purpose, the reason that a soul comes to earth is to experience, right? Like what is the meaning of life? Is just to experience. And it's like a human being. And so it's so hard for people to just be, myself included, sometimes, right? Like I caught myself today. Danny just dropped a news podcast. I'm like, oh, I want to listen to that, and downloaded it. And I was like, actually, I just want to walk and observe the town. Like I don't get to spend much time in Austin. I'm gonna go check it out and see if this is where I want to move. And so like I'll get to listen to it at some other time. Yeah. But wow, it's so. I mean, I've been guilty. I'm sure many people are, and podcast after podcast, like you don't even. This one doesn't even stop, and then the next one's already started, and it's like, okay, first off, you probably didn't absorb all that information if you're not going to actually like let it resonate. But then, when is there time for yourself?
Yeah, exactly, and I think there's a way you can be present and do it, but I haven't found that yet, and so I realized like I just enjoy going for a walk, listening to nature, no headphones, no anything, or just sitting and relaxing more than I do listening to a podcast or reading a book. And so because of that, this year, at most, listened to 5 podcasts.
This year?
It's November, yeah. Most of those being Michael Singer.
This year.
Yeah.
So we're in month 11. The 11th month is almost over, and you did 5 podcasts.
And I read, I think, 2 books, if that.
Wow.
Yeah. I still consume media. I dipped a little bit in politics. I wasn't perfect with this, right?
Right.
So media. YouTube videos once in a while. I like watching the sports highlights of Green Bay Packers and basketball and stuff like that. So I'm not like I'm against all entertainment media to begin with. I'm already building media companies, but I just realized like I'd rather not have something programmed
Right.
that isn't the real world in front of me.
So I think there's this journey of, I don't want to call it asleep, less aware, to then, oh, this programming stuff works. So I'm going to consciously program myself with the good stuff, and maybe limit the bad stuff. And then all of a sudden that starts to get in your mind, and then you start to notice like, oh, I can actually create my own reality. Oh, I can, all these things are possible. And then, at least for me, some people, we just stretch that time out instead of actually like implementing it. It's like, there's so much to learn. Like you could literally not, there's so much content out there, you could not consume it all.
Yeah, there's more YouTube videos being published every single second than there are people to consume it. So we'll have so much content out there, there's not enough human hours to consume it all. And that'll probably go and soon to be just for self-development content.
Right.
You know? And so there is so much content out there that improves your life. And I create it myself. I create it for people. But I create it for people to a certain level. To a certain consciousness. And then at a certain consciousness, you graduate from even personal development podcasts. Yep. Even from highly spiritual podcasts and books. And so the podcasts I've listened to have been Michael Singer, incredibly high vibe, talking straight about this stuff to the highest level. But he also knows that people are going to graduate from that.
Yeah.
Because all the lessons you could ever want from life will come to you in the present moment.
Right here, right now. So this is something that it took me a long time to figure out. Is this, there is only the present moment. Can you like make that more understandable?
I can do my best. It's not something I fully understand. This is one thing that I don't conceptualize to the level of which I embody. Most of it I conceptualize a lot and don't embody, right? Or as much as I would like to. But this one I think I embody more than I can conceptualize. But what I would say about the only thing that exists is right here, right now, is that both the past and the future are just our perception. We don't actually know how the past really happened. We have our truth, but there's no the truth. And of course, we understand for the future, there's no way to really understand what it's going to be. We're just guessing based upon what we know from the past. But both of these foreshadowing or reflectings are somewhat inaccurate. And while we're trying to do both, oftentimes fear from both, anxiety about the future, depression about the past, they're depriving us of what's currently going on in this present moment. And when someone is able to put down the phone, put down all distractions, and just be, no objective, no intention, just be where they're at. Presence is the house in which true happiness, bliss, contentment, fulfillment lives in. It's also the place of creativity. And so for those watching, including my past self, that really wanted to create something big in the business or the artist out there, whatever it is, that won't come as you're grinding away 20-hour days. The good ideas will come when you're sitting under a tree.
Yeah.
Doing nothing. This is going to get very spiritual, but what's actually happening here is you're going from your mind, in which all the mind knows is what it's seen and what it's experienced through your eyes. It's a compilation of all that, all the programs. And you can set aside the mind, the present moment. It opens you up to the channel, of course it's called TV channel, but it opens you up to receive information that goes beyond what you've experienced as a human. So, you know how they call, like all tech places call their services of collecting data as the cloud?
Yep.
Imagine that for all wisdom, for all creativity. Imagine a cloud in the sky that we can all connect to at any given moment through presence that will give us exactly what we need to know for life.
Incredible metaphor.
We can download, they call it downloads, like on mushrooms, I'm downloading. You're downloading it from the cloud, the collective. Carl Jung, Jordan Peterson loves, and he's a fantastic philosopher back in the day. He called it the collective unconscious.
Yes.
But it is a cloud above all of us. The very few people either understand and tapping into it when they are, or just don't have the mental and emotional freedom to tap into it because they're too busy watching what's on the news. But with that connection to that cloud flows through us exactly what's needed for our life. So let me give you an example yesterday. Now there's certain medicines out there that will help you with that connection. Mushrooms, cannabis to some extent, those other things. I'll tell you what happened yesterday. I won't get into specifics because in the next few weeks this will really be trending. But I just hosted my first retreat. Coaching business is going well. Just very, very grateful for that. And I've also just had this gut feeling for a while, like there's something else I'm supposed to be working on. Like this is all great, but this isn't like the thing. And I didn't know what it was. But yesterday, after having such an incredible conversation with Tom and just the entire retreat as a whole, I felt more free than ever. I finally let go of who I needed to be. I talk about it in the podcast. And with that freedom, and then I came home, started to fold some laundry, doing stuff around the house, saw Anna for the first time in a few days. Later that night, I took a edible drink, a cannabis drink. So I was high, I walked around the house, and Elle was talking to me as I was folding laundry, and I'm like, baby, pause, stop. Getting it down, I'm like, get your phone and start recording. I then, for 4 hours straight, start mapping out a business that I've never thought of in my entire life. And it's a business that will promote my messaging and the messaging of all the conscious people in the world that currently aren't on platforms that they want me to put their messaging on.
Wow.
And I got it in the macro and I got it in the granular. This is what the customer experience will be. This is what the employees' jobs will be. This is what I got everything. And chills.
Goosebumps.
Dude, I got to listen to the recording and now it's about planning this, but everything I've ever wanted, everything I've liked and desired, whether it's business, of course, spirituality, consciousness, when it comes to sales, when it comes to all these things, it all is going to be fully encompassed in this business. Because that message, that download, did not come from here, it came from there. So this isn't the first time this has happened in human history. I'm going to build this thing, and it's going to be big, and it's going to help a lot of people. Because it's going to empower high consciousness people to spread their message in an incredibly effective way. Because we need more Daniel Mirandas in the world.
Yes.
We need more Eckhart Tolles in the world. Not putting those to the same level, but you know what I mean. Similar but different. We need more people like that will then make these platforms, these very useful platforms, sway more positive and more enlightening.
Do you think that this was partially unlocked from Tom?
Exactly. You are given what you are ready for at all moments. And I was ready to receive that.
Yes.
And so I'm not comparing myself to these people, but I am saying these people in the past I'm about to name were also doing the same thing. George Washington and the Founding Fathers, I made the joke at the retreat, the Founding Fathers were a bunch of uneducated, some 17 years old to 32 years old, created the most powerful document in human history, the Declaration of Independence. And they all did it together, where it's potentially the most perfect document ever made. That somehow brings in all of the more religious, like the Bill of Rights, the Constitution. It somehow brings in all that from all different religions around the world. And somehow they're able to write it in the span of like hours. And it's perfect. And it is the new way of freedom, of love, and light that soon to be millions, hundreds of millions, and then other countries, so then billions of people are going to model after. And then George Washington goes along and makes near perfect cities for people to come across.
What do you mean by that?
He's had a lot of early developments of America. The architecture and infrastructure was way before its time of technology. It was just mapped out properly. And this happened in ancient Egypt. This happened for the Mayans. This happened all these places. They're getting this information to the cloud on how to build, how to interact with other humans, and how to exist. Same as Nikola Tesla. Now he's been purposely almost forgotten in history when he should be one of the most famous people of all time for his technological advancements. He didn't do that from trial and error and study. He was eons ahead of everyone else because he was getting it from the cloud. The cloud, the collective consciousness, probably a mixture of our guides, our angels, and other entities floating above, maybe God itself, as God is everything. It is giving us exactly what we're meant to have. And so I'll give you another example. Michael Jackson was famous for wanting to make sure he had a recording studio near him at all times. And he said, because when the creativity hits me, I need to create it before Prince does.
Ideas, or people don't have ideas, ideas have people.
Exactly. This is where we get those ideas from. And so the more present we become, the more we open the floodgates for that wisdom to come to you. And some of that wisdom will be like, how do I just live my life better? How to become more at peace? And some of that wisdom, which is what I do for work, oftentimes is I channel what people need to hear at that exact moment to make the change in life. And one of my spiritual gifts is I get very in particular downloads of what has happened to them in the past and what's going to happen to them now that's keeping them at a certain conscious level and stopping them from growing.
So you'll know something before they tell you.
Correct. Not all the time. Not every single person. But if I'm meant to help guide them on the journey, I'm giving it.
You're like, I'm feeling called to ask you about.
Exactly. So if I say something like that, that's what's happening.
Huh.
Especially if it's like completely random, like a left field, like it oftentimes is.
Wow.
So the collective consciousness is fueling all of us to rise. And the more people we can get to be in the present moment, letting this take a back seat, take a rest, allow us all to channel what's meant to be built.
Let me build off that. So, it's like our mind or our existence is like an iPhone. We have full storage, and meditation allows us to delete some of that storage so that way we can receive from the cloud, because before we couldn't. Mm-hmm. Would you agree that you can't channel if you've got all this other gunk or all this garbage or all these programs that you haven't yet let go of?
Yeah. Now, some people are gifted at it more than others, right? So like Michael Jackson, he had a lot of stuff going on. Don't want to get too stupid, but he had a lot of stuff going on.
Yes.
But he was still very creative. Creative people are getting it from that. That's why it's flow state. When you're creating, you lose track of time because it's if you're human, Cameron Hogan takes a little back seat.
The God inside you is running.
God inside you is running. Where information that God provided is running. And you have no track of time when you're consuming it and creating it, channeling it. And so when you're fully present, you oftentimes lose track of time often because you're just always in that mode. And it's not always when you're present, you're not always in this creating mode, but you're always in this mode of bliss.
Incredible. Can you break this down into, doesn't have to be like a 3-step process, but like the super digestible, if somebody's listening or watching this and like, I want to learn how to channel, what would the process, like, you know, probably meditation is in here somewhere, but what is it that you either need to do or be or whatever in order to unlock that? Because this is like, I mean, half the people just stop watching because they're like, you're talking about channeling, right?
So Elon's channeling to some extent, right?
Absolutely.
But he's not, I don't think, a super advanced spiritual being. Maybe the alien, we don't know about that. Maybe. I think that a possibility that exists on this planet. But they're outstanding individuals that do this like extreme, audacious, how can they pull this off, invention, creation. You're just like, how? Probably doing this. And all of us are meant to do fantastic things, and we probably won't channel the next Elon Musk invention, but it will guaranteed lead to a happy, more fulfilled life. Channeling lives in the home of the present moment. It's a lot harder to channel if your mind's racing about a million things.
Yes.
And so that means we're solving for creating a formula pretty much for the present moment. What I would do is look at the computer as if it is look at the mind as if it is a computer. Because there are certain things in our mind that are currently running that are viruses. Those viruses is any hatred, judgment, or fear we have in the world. Those viruses are faulty programs that we took in. They're not serving us. No amount of hatred towards others serves you. It only makes you feel worse. What was the phrase? It's like resenting others is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
I've heard something similar to that, or anger is like holding a hot coal.
Exactly.
Waiting to throw it at someone else.
It's like why? And so whether we know or not, like that anger we have towards someone is taking up a lot of mental and emotional space. It's a virus going in, just taking up the whole brain, the whole mind. And you're constantly thinking about it. And even during the times when like you're not really doing anything, you think about it and you get angry, like, oh shit, whatever it is. What I would do there is understand that for a virus to leave the body, you must let it run its course.
What do you mean by that?
So if there's something within you that's not serving you, I wish in this world we can just kind of perform surgery and go in and just grab it out of the mind and it'd be gone. But what really is happening is you felt this way about someone, and the way through it is just to go upon a process of letting it go. And so if I feel anger towards an ex-girlfriend, the way to remove that virus, which she isn't the virus, but it's the anger towards her that's a virus. If I were to remove that, what I would do, which is the wildest thing in the world, but I would allow myself to be angry. The virus is within you, even on really.
Because you're suppressing it. You're sweeping it under the rug.
You're suppressing
right?
it. You're not letting it do what it's meant to do. Be felt fully. So like we said in the beginning, there's no problem with anger, guilt, shame, all those other things. The only problem with it is our attachment to it not being there.
Whoa. The only problem is our attachment to it not being there.
Yeah. So the anger we feel towards anyone, oftentimes what happens is they did something that made us feel angry and we didn't allow ourselves to fully feel it. We had things going on in life where people said, oh, you can't be angry at someone, you know, she's innocent, whatever. We didn't allow ourselves to be fully angry, and so it stays within us. Let's use even a better example. Let's use grieving. Someone died, right? oftentimes nowadays, because just not a good social safety net, whatever, if someone dies, the whole family, and most families really struggle because they lost an income. They got to work even harder. Now they got to plan the funeral, get everything ready, make sure all the things are in order. They're doing, not allowing themselves to feel the grief of someone dying. And so that grief, those emotions that were provoked or triggered when they pass away are still there. And they will stay there until we fully feel them. Until we allow ourselves to cry. So if you think about it, again, I love people in military service, but there are a lot of people that saw atrocious things. People, their best friends died right in front of them. But they're told not to cry. They're told to go home, don't think about it, and just move on with their life. And we're like, oh, okay, that works pretty well. Until the far majority of them kill themselves, or become alcoholics, or become abusive towards their family. It's because of the suppressed anger, suppressed grief, and everything they're not facing. Mm-hmm. Of course, I'd love a day where we don't have war, but at this current moment, because it exists, we need a recovery program after someone enlists, when they come back home, for them to process what happened. Because if they don't feel and look at what happened, themselves and everyone they know for the rest of their lives will have to feel it for them.
Whoa.
So back to kind of this mind virus thing, the way we allow it to be out of our computer is we need to let it go and release it. We do that by fully allowing it to run its course. So in this example of the veterans, we'd allow them to be okay with crime, to be okay with them being mad at the bad guy, our own government, whatever it is they want to be mad at. Allow them to be it. Like, it's okay. It's understandable. But those emotions, when they're allowed to be fully felt, won't stay for a lifetime. They only stay for a lifetime. People only hold on grudge for a lifetime because they're not letting it be fully felt. Because they have preconceived notions, judgment towards themselves about being angry. It's like, oh, I can't be angry, I'm gonna stop. But if we allow them to fully grieve, fully feel shame, fully feel anger, sadness, or even the joy and bliss, sometimes over the span of just minutes, sometimes hours, sometimes days, sometimes months, sometimes just in minutes, that will move through them and the virus will leave. So the biggest thing we can do to increase our quality of life to become more present is allow that stored, stuck energy within to finally be felt.
Whoa. So if someone has, like, everybody has something they wish didn't happen.
Exactly.
Per se, right? So it's going back, would you say, like, almost get into a meditative state and relive that experience and break down crying or punch a pillow or do whatever?
Reliving the experience is definitely a complicated grounds because people have been through some severe things, really, and I think that it may be best for them to have it in a guided space where they have someone who's an expert at this walk them through it. But those experts are more than likely, yes, going to have them go back into that room when that terrible thing happened. Or a different modality in which they can fully face what happened. Stop running away from the truth of what happened. And finally give themselves the space to feel what they weren't able to feel back then.
Wow. Was there anything that you were running away from when you went to Bali?
Yeah, I feel as if, like many others, through society and through family, I created a story in my head that I wasn't enough, that I wasn't worthy of being loved. And that's the foundation level. But the surface level was need to be different. I couldn't do the normal path because I'm not normal. I have these things, I have these skills, I have these gifts. I need to prove myself in some way.
Right.
So I'm gonna live a different life. That was a huge part of it. I knew the life that was being prescribed for me was not gonna be it. And it wasn't from a place of, oh, I just want to be different. It was a place of, I need to be different because I am different. Please give me your attention. Please give me your love. I'm enough, right? Please? Yes? It was coming from that place. And so on the surface level, it looks like an extremely ambitious person who wants to live a, nothing wrong with a fun life, but a life that's people write home about.
Right.
But oftentimes I wanted to write home about it so I could flex on others.
Yeah.
So I can be like, yeah, see, I'm doing this. What are you doing?
This is what I did.
Yeah, see, I'm important. Please love me.
Oh, yeah.
When it doesn't matter. And so that was what I was running away from, most definitely. And it took going back to those stories that I made, those experiences that I had, that would make me feel not enough. And fully living them, fully feeling them. And then once I did that, they no longer burdened me. The people involved, everything were just in the clear. Good to go. So back to what you were saying before, that is by far the biggest lever we can pull towards moving towards the present moment in nearly all moments.
Feeling the feelings. Cleaning the inner world, per se.
Exactly.
Did you go through that program, by the way?
I did not. I heard great things about it, though.
Yeah, highly, highly recommend.
Really? Fantastic. Yeah. Of course.
Oh, man.
Tegenated, of course it is.
Yeah.
So that's by far the biggest lever you can pull. The second, funny enough, is exactly what we've been talking about for the majority of this episode, which is understanding love and fear and being, all right, what are the inputs that are currently bringing fear into my life? Let's exit those out. And so naturally, you're going to have a more loving view of life. That with finally confronting everything we've been avoiding, also partnered with changing our day-to-day habits and actions through habit stacking, through anything that will build up our confidence and competence in ourselves and our integrity. Those three is the formula towards a present, happy life. Clear out the garbage within. Clear out the garbage from outside, the fear. And incrementally build yourself into a person that you're proud of, that you love. Not that other people love, but you love. A person that stays true to their word, that follows through on what they say they're going to do. If you do those three things, guarantee you'll have a fantastic life. And you'll create your own reality.
Yes, sir. That feels like a very perfect place to end it, to wrap up. Is there anything else that you want to talk about, touch on, or?
Oh, that's really about it. You got the whole formula there.
Yeah.
Yeah. If the last thing I would just say is to remind people that this life is your life. And although many others may not fully believe it yet, you chose your circumstances. You chose it when you were born, before you were born.
Yes.
In the spiritual understanding. And also as you go upon your life every single day, you are creating your own reality. And so we are here to empower every single human to have the best life they can possibly imagine for themselves. To embrace the highest version of themselves.
I love it. If people want to find you, follow you, or work with you, or apply to work with you, how do they do that?
All the platforms at the Cameron Hogan website, thecameronhogan.com. Like I mentioned a few minutes ago, I'm a coach, I host retreats, I write all the time on all those platforms. You'll see all that linked. I'm also stepping into creating a new business to really elevate the consciousness and help great, high vibe people show off their gifts, talents to the world, and you guys will be hearing more about that soon.
When's the next retreat?
Next retreat,
I mean, to be determined, probably. But
I'm doing a retreat with my good friend Justin Novato.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they came to our retreat as a co-facilitator, the workout and breathwork guy. I'm doing one in January with him in January.
Okay.
And so in the next probably week or two, that'll be public, and it'll be good to go for that. With Jack, it's going to be coming soon. Don't have a date yet. He just his last one, but we're both like, this is awesome. We're doing this again. So that'll be coming soon. But yeah, man, it's a great life, and I'm very, very glad that I can impact people.
Amazing. Yeah. I mean, you just glow when you do it, right? And you can see how good you feel, and I feel good just and energized just talking to you.
Thanks, man. And again, it's I know it's me doing it. My name's on the website and hosting it and sending emails, but it's a channeling thing. It really is. And this is meant to happen. The people that show up, the people watching this, it's all meant to be. It's all divine.
Wow. Incredible. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, my friend. Really enjoyed this.
Me too. Bring it in for a hug to wrap it up.
Man. Let's do it.